From the UCLA Labor Center and KPFK, you're listening to Rework.
I'm going home to see my baby, big sweet baby of mine. Been so long without my baby, till sometimes I feel I'm plumb going out of my mind. I'm leaving this town.
I'm Stephanie Ratapper.
And I'm Saba Wahid.
So here's a question. Do you know what it was like to give birth to you? So all of us are on this planet because we were born. Still, giving birth is so mysterious to most of us. I know I've never been to a birth. And I mean, what do you imagine when you think of one? A room full of doctors and nurses, or a woman in pain just cursing at her partner?
And that's the thing. You don't really learn about what it's like to have a baby unless you're about to have one. Yet, the process of giving birth is complicated. A person has to make huge decisions before and during the birthing process. Should I give birth at home or in the hospital? Should I get a C-section? Should I get an epidural?
And so in comes a doula, whose job is to act as a guide, to provide support, give information, and in some cases even act as a bodyguard. In this week's episode of Rework, we follow one doula, Pati, to understand more about the journey of giving birth.
On the day of birth, the pregnant woman is under extreme pressure and needs to make quick decisions. Pati is a doula, and she is there to help manage the pain and help them understand the choices. She tells us about a woman whose pregnancy she assisted. They were in the hospital, and the woman was in extreme pain, struggling through growing contractions.
You know, we did different positions. She didn't like many of them. And then I just looked at her and I said, "Do you dance? Do you like to dance?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm a belly dancer." And I said, "Oh, is that right? Can you show me how you belly dance?" So then she spent the next hour and a half belly dancing, like a big belly, ready to give birth. And she really knew how to move, right? So it was really fun to watch. And then she was laboring. So, I just handed her water in between contractions and was like, "You look great." It got really intense. And it was towards the end. And she was like, "Okay, I'm done. I want to get an epidural." And I mean, she was like 9 centimeters. And I was like, "Cool. What is it about the pain right now that's unbearable?" And she was just like, "I'm just tired. I don't want it." And so luckily the nurse was also really supportive of a natural birth. And long story short, we were able to distract her from the pain long enough for her to give birth naturally.
So Pati has been working as a doula for 8 years and has witnessed a total of 70 births. Her role begins months before the birth even happens. She meets with the family and talks them through the entire process of what could happen during the birth. She shares different options from the least to the most invasive procedures and the pros and cons of each. From there, they create a birthing plan that fits them.
I've recently been attracting a lot of families who don't want to gender their baby before it's born. And I had a family that put it in their birth plan that they didn't want anyone to speak when the baby came out. They didn't want an announcement of the gender. So when the baby came out, it was silent, and it was mom and dad talking to the baby, like, "Welcome, and you're finally here. We love you so much." They looked, and they saw what the baby had, but they just really enveloped the baby with a lot of love and welcoming energy without saying it's a boy or a girl or anything like that. And that was a really special moment.
Leading up to the birth, Pati provides support. She checks in after the doctor's visits and answers questions, since sometimes the doctors will only visit with the family for 10 minutes at a time. And perhaps most importantly, she provides the reassurance and support to get them through having the baby.
There was definitely a lot of conversation of like, "I can't do this. I can't do this." A lot of people end up saying that over and over again because they've never done it before, and it's incredible what their body's doing. So they're like in disbelief. So a lot of the time my response is, "You're doing it. You're doing it. You're doing it great." And, just cheerleaders. Like, I remember the husband and I were just cheerleaders. "You're doing wonderful. I know it's intense," and just validating everything they're feeling and at the same time reflecting that it's almost over.
For Pati, being a doula wasn't necessarily her first choice, or even her second. Like most of us, she hadn't even heard what a doula is. Instead, she was a self-proclaimed feminist, and she started working at Planned Parenthood. She thought this would be the way for her to be on the front lines of defending the rights of women and standing up for what she believed. But soon she began to find herself ill at ease with the way the clinicians treated patients. One incident was the final straw.
The door was open to the clinic room where the patient had just been seen, and the practitioner came out, got the birth control or whatever, and to bring it back to the client. And she yelled, "I'm going to throw an extra emergency contraceptive pill in here for the next time you screw up." And that floored me. And I immediately said to her, "Excuse me, I think you need to go in there and apologize because that is inappropriate. It is not okay for you to talk to her like that from over here. If you want to tell her that, go in there. But then again, like, you shouldn't actually be telling her that either." I got fired because of that. And there's other reasons. Like, I think I was just angry because I thought that we would be respectful of all the people that came in for any kind of services. And there was a lot of judgmental comments made about people who were coming in for their third, fourth, fifth, sixth abortion. Like, the clinicians and like staff people would like go to a little corner and just talk smack about people. And it was so disheartening. And it was very much like, oh, if it was a Latina or someone someone undocumented or like a dark-skinned person, like, it was very much like hatred and anger towards them. But if we had like a 17-year-old honor student that was white coming in for their abortion, it was like no one mentioned anything. There was no like facial expression, nothing about it. And it was just normal.
Simmer down, simmer down, simmer down, simmer down, lay your head down.
A realization hit her. So often we hold the right to choose as one of the central pillars of feminism. It represents the ultimate woman's right to her own body. It's the last frontier of defiance against a society that typically decides so much about what women can do and cannot do. Yet so often, this was a defensive battle, and women who are not white, middle class, are often left on the sidelines. And that's when Pati started to think more about the field of birth.
Here's the thing. We don't get taught about our bodies really at all. And so then, like, I think we get taught about our periods, a little bit about how ovulation works. When we learn about sex, we learn about how not to get pregnant and how to avoid disease. Here you are, totally feminist, liberated, educated, and you're pregnant, and then you are expected to just breathe and like trust the doctor and everything's going to open up and you're just going to give birth. And what people don't realize is that if you're not aware of what your body has the potential to do, the doctors and nurses will tell you what your body's going to do. And it's going to be based on what they feel comfortable with. And I'm being nice by saying what feels comfortable to them, but I'm also talking about like what's convenient for them. And so that's the major problem, is that we have this like blind trust in doctors that they're going to do what's in our best interest, but it's not necessarily that way all the time. There's a lot of other factors, like vacation times or holidays. Like, I have experience where people are due around the holidays, and so doctors are trying to like get clients induced before the holiday so that they don't have to be on call, like things like that. So, and I don't know that families are alert or aware of those things. They are counting on the fact that most people don't understand their bodies.
Whether it was the right to choose to have an abortion or the right to be informed and make choices during a pregnancy, at the core of her belief is having agency over your body. She felt a particular responsibility to work in the field of birth as a woman of color. The majority of people giving birth are people of color. And yet, if you're Black, you are 4 times more likely to die or have your baby die at birth or within the first year. If you're Latino, you are 3 times more likely. Another one of the first births Pati helped with was pretty unusual. She was in a couple's house with 2 midwives, a breathing coach, and a student midwife. They had pushed aside the breakfast nook in the kitchen, put a small inflatable kiddie pool in its place, where the mother was sitting wrestling with her contractions. There were 5 people in the house to support her because she was about to go through a breech birth.
So usually babies come out head first. Breech births are when the baby doesn't flip over and comes out instead with its butt or feet first. These births are notoriously difficult, and many doctors insist on C-sections in place of natural births. However, Pati was in the presence of expert midwives who preserve this lost art.
Basically, it really felt like we were doing something really old, really ancient. We all just kept the faith that like, oh, this could totally happen. Yeah, no problem. You know, they kept checking the heart rates of the baby and everything was fine throughout the whole process. The whole concept is to be hands off of the baby and kind of let the baby figure its way out. And so the baby came out right butt cheek first, and then the right leg came out, and then kind of like the left butt cheek came out. And then you could just see the low back of the baby wriggle on out, and then her arms came out. So she totally came in backwards.
Watching this, Pati felt she was witnessing something ancient. It was inspiring and beautiful. At this point, she was working as a caseworker for a nonprofit organization and had essentially taken a sick day to go and support her first birth.
I thought, wow, this is a really trippy message I'm getting right now because it's 2008 and we're doing a home birth and it's breech and it's okay. I trust the midwives. I trust the mom. I trust the baby knows what they're doing. And so I was like, man, maybe I actually belong in these spaces and not in an actual cubicle, because I had never had anything deep inside me affirm that that's where I needed to be. Like I never felt that way when I was in my cubicle, but at this specific birth, it was a really loud message that I did not belong anywhere else.
Pati was finished working 2 jobs. Her calling was certain, and she decided to double down and focus on just being a doula.
At one birth, Pati helped a mother who was an athlete.
She would rock back and forth on hands and knees for like a contraction or 3. And then she would sit up onto the toilet right after that and have like 2 or 3 contractions there. She just did this for like, I swear it must have been maybe 4 to 6 hours. And no one could believe that she was so far ahead in her labor. Because usually first-time moms will take 12 hours or more, and she'd only been like there for 4 to 6 hours. And she said, oh, I think the baby's coming out. And the nurses weren't ready, and they were like, no, you can't give birth yet because the doctor's not here. And she was like, no, I think the baby's coming out. And so she got up on the bed on hands and knees and was just rocking back and forth. And then she's like, oh, I think the head came out. And no one was near her. And it was just hilarious because she was just on her own. She didn't want to be touched. She just had this. She was like really working the labor like she was on some marathon. And when the head came out, that's the only moment where the nurses realized that she was serious, like that aware of where she was in her labor, that she could say the baby's head's coming out, and then it came out, and there's no doctor or nurse nearby. So when they saw the head, her butt was facing the door, and her hands were like at the edge of the bed where usually her butt would be. And so they were like, oh, no, you cannot give birth in that position. And she was like, I'm not moving. You guys have to figure this out. And so eventually what happened is they were able to convince her to get on her side. And the doctor came. But they like really encourage you to hold that baby in for the doctor to catch it. It has a lot to do with like who's going to get paid. And so it's really trippy how birth gets affected in a hospital setting, because it really has little to do with the really sacred moment of a human coming onto the planet. It has so much more to do with everything else that's so not important.
And so that's the thing about being a doula. You get full access into the medical system and the business of birth. Many hospitals prevent midwives from being present while a parent is having the baby, but doulas are allowed in right alongside family and medical staff. And so with each birth that she attended, Pati often found the women giving birth and the people taking care of them at the hospital weren't quite in sync. Doctors seem so official sometimes, and we want to trust them. But they're also mere humans, too, who make mistakes. And there's a lot of politics that shape the work that they do.
In fact, The practice of giving birth in a hospital is a recent phenomenon. In 1900, 95% of the births in the United States took place at home. Through a purposeful and calculated campaign on behalf of the medical establishment, doctors were able to convince women that the hospital was the best place to give birth. 30 years later, the number of home births had shrunk in half. Today, the number is less than 1%.
So what happens when birth becomes an industry? When medical professionals have more say in what happens in the process than people giving birth themselves? Well, today, 1 in every 3 births occur surgically via C-section. And most women are lying in bed during labor without food or water, restricted by monitors strapped around their belly that measure fetal heart rates. And the majority of women opt for an epidural, the spinal medication that numbs the body from the waist down. Inductions that accelerate labor are also common practice.
And the system discourages any deviation from these practices. Sometimes this can even lead medical professionals to treat pregnant people violently and disregard their requests. This happens even more frequently when patients are not educated and don't speak English. In one case, Pati was helping a young mixed-race single mom who had done most of her laboring at home and then entered the hospital in the last stages before having the baby.
The moment she walked in, why didn't you come in earlier? You were supposed to come in when blah, blah, blah. So being yelled at for coming in whenever she did come in. So she has to ignore that and chill and stay focused in the labor and try to push a baby out, right? So this particular person wanted everything to be natural. And so many times after someone gives birth, they tear, and then a doctor will suture and, suture the tear. And so this particular doctor decided that he was going to suture without putting local anesthesia. And she started saying, ow, that hurts. We're talking about a needle with a thread intervaginally to the labia. And most doctors will put lidocaine in that area and numb that area. This particular doctor was sewing or suturing and saying to the mother, well, this is what you get when you don't get an epidural, when you don't come in early enough to get an epidural. And she's writhing in pain. And then at that point, I didn't know to tell this fool to put lidocaine on her and just call it a day. Why are you torturing her, right? So he said, oh, but you didn't want an epidural. So let me give you this. So he puts a narcotic into her IV. And she had specifically did not want any kind of drugs. So then that makes her so drugged up that she can't hold her baby. But now she's numb enough to finish the suturing without pain. These are the ways that I think that's birth rape, because he's giving her pain that she doesn't need to feel. But it's because he's upset because she didn't come in early enough to get an epidural. Basically, she probably just didn't come in early enough for them to bill for a lot of other things.
In hindsight, Pati came to realize that there were a number of signposts throughout her whole life that led her to become a doula.
My sister, her whole life has been interested in babies and trips out with watching pregnant women and will point out a pregnant belly. And so sometimes I wonder if there's a huge energy of my sisters coming through me to feel this work. I'll show her the pictures of my babies that I help out, and she just smiles. And so she's definitely, she appreciates it,
When Pati was younger, she and her sister were in a car accident that changed the course of their lives completely. A family member was driving them home on the freeway when all of a sudden her sister got sick.
And my family member pulled over in what he thought was an emergency lane, which was actually the fast lane, the carpool lane. And so I took off my seatbelt and just kind of went to take a nap, just leaned my head over while he got in the back and changed her. And I was looking at the rear view mirror, and I saw these lights coming at us, and I was like, damn, that car is coming really fast. And so I kind of braced myself, and then it hit us. And so I kind of just popped on over to the front seat almost. And since my family member was in front of my sister in the back seat, their heads collided. And she was like 22 months old, 23 months old. And they both passed out. I didn't at all. And so I looked over and, like, everything's shattered and messed up. And I I was like waking up my cousin and was like, hello, like, we've just got in an accident. You need to wake up. So he kind of came to and then was like, oh man, what's happened? So we eventually get out. My sister was kind of stuck with the seatbelt because she had her seatbelt on. And then eventually we get her out and we lay her out, and she was having convulsions. And I remember that basically it was a drunk driver came out of his big truck. He came out and he was like stumbling all over, like, oh no, all messed up. And I remember yelling, "You're so stupid. You're so stupid." I mean, I was just a kid.
Luckily, everyone survived the crash, but Pati's sister experienced traumatic brain injuries that took a toll on her small body. That day became a never-ending cycle of going in and out of hospitals for her family.
My mom had tried to address this many times at the doctor's office, that my sister cried a lot and always touched her head. And my mom was like, I think she has hydrocephalus or something's wrong with her. Can you please evaluate her? But obviously she was not speaking English, so no one really cared. And so they just told my mom, oh, she's just a crybaby. She's just a crybaby. And so what happened is, with the car accident and the cranial fracture, it made everything worse. So the water pressure caused more of the brain damage. And here's the thing, my mom's newly immigrant. She's undocumented, basically, and she can't advocate for better care. And so they do, mind you, all the surgeries done at County USC Hospital students. So my sister comes out of like one surgery, and her right side is paralyzed, right? And then she goes into another surgery, and the left side becomes paralyzed and the right side starts working. So like there was just so many mistakes and things that happened with my sister. They kept telling my mom to just leave her alone, like don't stimulate her, just leave her there. She's a vegetable. You're just going to have to put her like in a home. And my mom was like, no, she needs to be stimulated and like enlivened and held and all these things. And they always wanted my mom out of the hospital room, and my mom was always like, no, I'm gonna stay here. And so I just remember witnessing a lot of that fighting of like my mom claiming her daughter. I mean, my sister, she's pretty good for what she went through. She's verbal, she can talk, she's really funny, she's witty. She has extremely good hearing, kind of like dog hearing. She'll hear a conversation far away. She's hilarious. But yeah, that accident was very much it's probably the biggest influence in my life, and pretty much dictates a lot of what I do or what's important to me.
Pati's strength to lead families through the process of birth comes from many of these experiences. She learned how to stay calm in chaotic situations. She learned how to navigate a complicated medical system and then translate it for a family that might not understand English. She learned when she should and when she shouldn't just take doctors' words at face value. And she learned through her own process of healing how to help others heal too.
And it helps to remember that the process of coming into this world is one that is so unique and so special. Pati recalls a C-section birth.
I don't know what came over this family, but they decided they were going to sing. And so as the baby's being lifted out, the mom and the dad are singing. They're singing, I don't know what song it was, but they sang it through like the surgery, through the baby coming out until the baby was handed to them. And then they just kept singing. And then the baby was put in the incubator, and they kept singing that song. And they sang that song, I think, till they were done working with mom. And that was amazing, because I think it may have curbed the trauma or the shock of being born that way. Yeah, I think it's helpful to remind like the world or like the nurses and doctors that this is actually a ceremony and it's actually a really special moment beyond like all the technical stuff. And so I've been fortunate to work with really interesting people that will do things like that. Yeah.
Today, Pati is an advocate, and she sees the power of doulas to transform births.
What people need to know about doulas is that we need more doulas. Like, ideally, I wouldn't even have this job. Like, there's no reason I should have to be at a hospital to basically protect and be the bodyguard of a pregnant person. Like, no, that shouldn't exist, but it does. And, you know, it's like, okay, what do we do? I mean, it's hard work, but it's so necessary. And we need more doulas of color. We need more conscious, politicized doulas. There's a lot of power in being a doula. And I think if we can use that power differently, or not even differently, but like combine our power, like connect other doulas to each other, we can make a big difference.
Pati is currently pursuing training to become a midwife. She recently moved to El Paso, Texas to attend Maternidad La Luz, a birth center that provides unique and holistic learning experience for aspiring midwives.
Thank you, Pati, for sharing your story with us. You can learn more about Pati at her website, chuladoula.com. To learn more about doulas, particularly with a race, class, and queer and trans lens, visit radicaldoula.com. You can also visit the Community Birth Center to learn about midwives and doulas at lacommunitybirth.com.
Unsure what the balance held, I touched my belly overwhelmed by what
You're listening to Rework, a program of the UCLA Labor Center and KPFK. This week's show was produced by Tyler Millis, Stephanie Ritopper, Saba Wahid, Gardenia Moreno, and Crystal Zamora. Musical support by Francisco Garcia Nava. Special thanks to Henry Walton. For more information about Rework, visit our website at reworkradio.org. There you can listen to previous shows and subscribe to our podcast. You can also tweet your reactions to this show to @rework_radio.
Until next time, rethink, rework.
now the joy of my world is inside.